This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. All right, let's talk about this game. And you know what, man? I was kind of dreading this one throughout the week. I was dreading rewatching it. I was thinking in my head, man, nobody's going to want to rewatch this game with me because it's one of those games that was very forgettable, right? The Browns play the Bears, and what we kind of Spark Notes generally remember is that this is one of them games where Joe Flacco threw you into a deficit and threw you out of a deficit. And because of that perception I had on this game, I was not excited about watching this game. But when I started to watch this game, I had a different perspective on it. I'm going to be honest here, and I think this is going to be maybe the headline for this video, or maybe something else will take over. But the first thing I will say is, last week, I talked about that game that Joe Flacco had versus the Jaguars, and I said the numbers are very misleading. I don't think he played as well as 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 1 fumble loss would indicate. And I stand by that. I don't think that game was as good as those numbers indicate. This is the exact opposite. I don't think this game versus the Bears is as bad as we remember it from Joe Flacco's part, and as bad as the stats are. Like, I walked away from this game thinking, you know what? I walked away from this when I watched it thinking that Joe Flacco was awful in that game, and he kind of got lucky to bail himself out. That's what I thought when this game happened. I walk away from the rewatch thinking, nah, Joe played pretty decent in this one. I'll talk about why I feel that way in a minute. But other things that popped out to me while watching this game. One, the Browns defense dodged a bullet. Well, not the Browns defense. The Browns in general dodged a bullet. They should have got beaten versus the Chicago Bears in this game. Point blank, period. Some of it is due to the interceptions. I think Joe Flacco threw 3 of them in this game. Some of them are because of those turnovers. Other reasons they should have gotten beat, I mean, just look at some of these missed opportunities from Chicago. This play right here in the first quarter should have been a touchdown, but for whatever reason, the tight end decides to juggle the ball instead of catch it and ends up not being a touchdown, right? You got exactly what you had. Sione Takitaki stretched out down the field. I mean, that should have been a hit, and Justin Fields throws a strike to him to drop. Then you have this play, which is very forgotten about, where Joe Flacco just throws the ball backwards. And this reminded me of the play where Deshaun Watson decided to throw the ball backwards to Elijah Moore versus the Titans. Now, because it's Deshaun, became a huge thing and people reacted to it and still react to it, despite the fact that Deshaun had over 300 total yards in that game. And I think he was responsible for like 3 touchdowns in that game. It was a really good game by Deshaun. But this fumble really should have went the other way. I don't know what Joe Flacco was thinking, throwing this one backwards and like just the way. I don't know what he was thinking. He intentionally threw it backwards. If you watch the game replay, like you can see him like throw it back. It was such a bad idea. And it really, really should have put the Browns in what should have been like a 21-0 hole in the first quarter. Cause I think the Bears don't score on their own. I think the Bears score off of one of our interceptions. I'm not 100% sure if I remember that happening in the first, but it was early. They should have had that touchdown at the beginning of the game. They should have had that fumble, and they should have probably scored off that fumble, but it rolled out of bounds. And they probably should have won this game, right? There were 3 near interceptions in this game, just in one drive alone. He threw a lot of near interceptions, but to be fair, both quarterbacks threw a lot of near interceptions in this game. A lot of dropped interceptions happened in this game. So that one is probably the least damning of all the other reasons why the Browns like truly dodged an upset here. Like they got lucky in this game on a lot of things. The other thing that helped the Browns win this game is the defense. The defense gave up 3 points in this game. Every other point was off of the Browns offense. But the defense, they gave up one drive where the Bears did a good job getting the ball to Velus Jones a couple of times with some end arounds that got him in the field goal territory. The Browns defense, on the other hand, yeah, they didn't play bad at all. I thought Greg Newsome was pretty good in this game, had some solid moments, and really showed you that when he's moving north and south, he's a really good player. I think the issue with Greg Newsome is you got to avoid ways for him to go east and west. He's not a good east and west corner. If you cut on him, you run a dig, you run a slant, you run a post, you run an out on Greg Newsome, you can beat him if you get him one-on-one without any kind of leverage or safety help. You can beat him because he's not the quickest going left to right. But north and south, he can do north and south pretty well. And I think that's why so many people argue with me about that, because you see Greg Newsome do north-south so well that you assume that east-west shouldn't be a problem. But I think Bill Belichick has the quote, when it comes to guys in the NFL, you got to move backwards, forwards, left or right. Some of them can move backwards and forwards. Some of them can move left and right, but nobody can do all four. Like those are the unicorns that can move and do all four. Greg Newsome can go backwards. He can go forwards. He cannot go left, right. But I thought he did a good job. In this game, there was a lot of situations where he was going north-south. He's excellent north-south. Cam Mitchell, I thought, stepped up, made some big plays in this one, made a really big play on a 4th and 1 that was integral to the Browns being able to get a stop that led them to eventually win this game. JOK late in this game, along with Myles Garrett, just took over in the 4th quarter. And I think that's going to be something that the Browns are going to hope becomes a staple of this defense. Not just Myles Garrett taking over in clutch situations, but JOK tagging along with them, right? The Browns have so many impact players on defense. I think those are the two who have shown the most not intention, but the most ability to show up in those clutch moments. And I think the player of the game for the defense was Dalvin Tomlinson. This is what I'm talking about with Dalvin Tomlinson. When I showed you the breakdown that I had when I ranked Dalvin Tomlinson in my top 25, I said he needs to be a game changer in the run game a bit more often than he was. In this game right here, if you're telling me, hey, what game do you want Dalvin Tomlinson to repeat 4 or 5 more times this season for him to have the year that you expected? It's this game where he's a force in the run game, where he's breaking these double teams and he's splitting guys. Like, he's just great in this game. I thought he was excellent. He really was just causing havoc, right? Not just as a pass rusher, which he can do every once in a while, but also as a run defender. Like, he needs to be that impactful in the run game. We need to see this Dalvin Tomlinson a lot more next year. Like, if you thought the Browns defensive line was good, and they were last year, there's so much room for improvement for them. I think Myles could have a better year than he had last year. I don't think Myles' year last year was like the best year he's ever had in his career. He's just Myles Garrett, which means if you mess around and put him one-on-one, you're going to live with that. And after Myles being Myles for so long, teams have just decided to go full go or just stopping him. And that got him the defensive player of the year because teams finally started to pay attention to what Myles has been doing over the last few years. But I think Myles can play better. I think Zadarius has a lot of room for improvement. Dalvin Tomlinson has a lot of room for improvement. And those are 3 of your main players on your defensive line that I think can play even better than they did last year. So again, this was a really good defensive line last year. I think they can get so much better. I really do think they can get so much better than they were last year. But yeah, Dalvin, I thought he played super great in this game. So that's my thoughts on the defense, the overall luck in this. Let's talk about Joe Flacco. Because again, coming into this game, coming into this rewatch, I was like, man, I already know how I feel. I'm going to say that he played bad in this one. People are going to be mad at me about it. But that's not the case. I don't think Joe Flacco played bad in this game. There's some context that matters with this game that gets lost over time, right? Context doesn't just exist for Deshaun Watson. Context is this for everybody. I know some people think that I only use context for a player or there or whatever it is, but I use this universally. In this game, Joe Bitonio goes out pretty early, right? So you're down Joe Bitonio. Ethan Posick did not play in this game. It was Nick Harris. Wyatt Teller was the only starter who played, and he was in this one. Like, there was one drive where he completely derailed it with 2 holding calls back to back. And both of your tackles, you're down to Garyon Christian and James Hudson. This is not a good offensive line that they threw out there. Also, there was heavy rain in this game, at least in the first half. And I think that really affected a lot of the stuff that happened with Joe Flacco. Now, that's not to say he didn't do anything bad. We're going to talk about that. But this first interception that he had to Cedric Tillman, I mean, we found out that was Cedric Tillman's fault. Now, that does lead to a touchdown, which does not help your defense. But it's not because Joe Flacco is playing so bad. It's a good read. Cedric Tillman's just not where he's supposed to be. Okay, now, in Cedric Tillman's defense, while he did make that mistake, I think Cedric Tillman spent the rest of that game bouncing back quite nicely. It's not something we talk about a lot because the narrative is that Cedric Tillman didn't do what he was supposed to do, and then he got benched and he didn't play anymore. But that's not the case. Cedric Tillman had a strong game, specifically after that interception happened. He played strong. He played really good on the drive after that and played really good for the rest of the game. So, you know, we got to give Cedric Tillman a lot of credit for bouncing back after that interception. And then after that, I think Flacco, similar to Cedric Tillman, I think Flacco bounces back a little bit. I think he makes a nice throw on this jump ball to David Njoku. It's a really nice ball by Joe Flacco. It's a really good decision by Joe Flacco. Now we have to talk about some of the other stuff that Joe did that people categorize this as bad. There's that second interception, the pick six, which I do think 100% Joe Flacco's fault. This is a bad interception. What he did was throw a medicine ball over the middle of the field, and it's slow, it's late, it's a medicine ball. Another thing that Joe Flacco did on this play was he led Cedric Tillman to the right, even though Cedric Tillman, who properly reads this play, sits down in the zone, causing Cedric Tillman to run right into this linebacker who pops the ball out and makes it an interception. All of that shit is Joe Flacco's fault. That's a bad read. The ball should have went to Amari Cooper on this play. It's a bad read when it comes to throwing the ball, like as far as after you've made the decision how you throw the ball, because you're leading somebody as if it's a man coverage play and he's running a drag underneath when he has read the play correctly and sat in the zone to have you throw the ball to him. So it's a bad throw, bad read on the throw, bad read before the throw, bad pre-snap read. It's a horrible play by Joe Flacco. I think that he deserves all the negativity from that play. Then there's another play. And I think the situation this play happened in is why it pissed people off. The Browns get a muff punt recovery, which is a huge break in this game, right? The Browns been down in this game like 10 points for like a whole quarter at this point. They get a muff punt recovery. It's a massive break for this team. And then Joe immediately throws an interception. And that kind of stuff pisses people off. It's a bad interception on the fact that it was just a bad ball. It was a fine read to David Njoku. He was wide open. He just threw it late in behind. Maybe the wind caught it. It just was a bad ball. It wasn't a bad decision. It was a bad ball. And that caused it to be an interception. And that mistake, you look at like him getting away with the throwing the ball backwards pass behind the line of scrimmage that we showed earlier. And it's really easy to paint this game and think this game is a bad one. But he made so many plays down the stretch. And honestly, made a lot of plays before those mistakes that I don't really think this was a bad game. I will defend this game by Joe Flacco. I'm not saying it was his best game as a Cleveland Brown, but what I am saying is that this game was better than the Jacksonville one, right? This game was better than the last, well, it was almost as good as the 3 quarters in the Rams game. Honestly, I would say it's better than the Rams game because he doesn't melt down completely at the end once things don't go well like he did in the Rams game. It wasn't a bad game to me as far as like if I'm ranking this on the Joe Flacco standard. Like if this were Deshaun Watson, it probably would not be read as a good game because he gets judged on a higher bar than Joe Flacco does. But yeah, I think this was a fine game from Joe Flacco. And I think we might have overreacted to how bad we thought that game was. I think this is an underrated one. He did almost throw a lot of turnovers. He had 4 turnover-worthy plays in this game. It was not a perfect game, but honestly, you look at any game that Joe Flacco played, whether you think it's good or bad, there's a ton of turnover-worthy plays and just a ton of turnovers in general because that's just the kind of dude Joe Flacco is. He gonna turn that thing over. It is what it is. And I think the quality of throws that he makes in this game, the quality of decision making he has at the end of this game specifically, pulled this in a direction where I'm like, nah, this was a good game overall. Overall, it was a good game. But that's my thoughts on this one. That's how I came out of it feeling. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.